talk. Go on and bring her in. And just go to about
we're live
7:15.
we're live on Facebook.
Yeah.
We're live.
Love you, man.
Peace out. Good evening, everyone. Indiana's own Dana Black coming to you. I apologize for my tardiness. We had a slight technical difficulty on the radio show, so I didn't want to start the Facebook Live until we had that resolved, and I want you guys hanging on. We have a great show planned for you today, but you know me. First things first, I'm going to run off my homie Chris told me, we call them church announcements. So I'm going to go ahead and get these church announcements out of the way first. So if you guys follow me on Facebook, you know that I've been promoting and advertising a meet and greet with Congressman Eric Swalwell. He is of the 15th District of California. I had the chance to meet with him, with Congressman Carson, maybe a couple of months back when they were trying to discuss how we get millennials involved more in the political process. And you know me, if you ever met me, and for the first time, I'm always slipping a business card in your hand. So the first time I met him, I slipped a card to him. He reached back out to me and just said, hey, it was a pleasure to meet you. And then I got a call from his staff saying, hey, he's going to be in town visiting his family. His in-laws are from Columbus, Indiana, and he would like to do a meet and greet. So he's actually coming to the 5th district. So he's not going to be in the 7th district, in Andre's district. We're coming to Susan Brooks's town, right? Eric Swalwell, a good Democrat. He is on the Intelligence and Judiciary Committee in Congress. With all the madness going on with the Russian investigation and who talked to who and who had meetings with who, you might want to come and meet this young man and hear what he's talking about and hear what he is going to do with his colleagues to try to counteract some of that nonsense that we're hearing and all the nasty tweets that we're getting from what is supposed to be one of the most prestigious offices in the land, and that's the President of the United States. Also, if you have questions about the health care bill and what are the things they're trying to do, considering that, you know, Republicans really haven't even tried to work with Democrats on this Republican bill. In fact, they've even said, we better get something done or we'll have to work with Democrats. I mean, it's just that bad in Washington. But come out to the Hatch. The address is 6161 Hillside Avenue from 5 to 5:30. This is a free event. This is not a fundraiser. He is just here meeting and greeting with people. He's been going all over the country, but I know with Congressman Carson and different people, but his family's here, and I think you guys will like him. I enjoy talking to him.
What's the date?
Saturday, July 1st, 2017, this Saturday from 5 to 6:30. Come on out. I probably will be pseudo casual, right? I probably won't have a tie on because it's Saturday. Just so you know. But come on out, check it out. I also want to talk about on July 6th, there's a candidate training that's going on in Hendricks County. Hendricks County for Change is hosting a candidate training Thursday, July 6th at 5:30 p.m. at the Brownsburg Public Library, Meeting Room C. If you have ever been interested in running for office or it doesn't matter where on the ballot you want to sit. If you want to try a school board or a township trustee, or you want to, run for state senator or, House rep, doesn't matter. This training is really good. I had a chance to sit in on it a couple weeks ago. They're very well organized, and they ask you the right questions to find out whether or not this is the right position for you. So I'm excited about it. You guys should check them out. I don't have a long list because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still on island time. I shouldn't be. I've been back for a few days, but I'm going to tell you, Aruba, put it on your bucket list. Put Aruba on your bucket list. Okay? I mean, I ate so much good food. I got to get back in the gym. Sabay Martin, I'm coming in the morning, 4:30. Look for me. Good food. Good atmosphere. We stayed in an Airbnb so we could be amongst, the real live Arubians. We didn't do now my wife is much more of a resort girl than I am, but we really had a good time and just really, really, really amazing good food and good times. It was me and my wife's third wedding anniversary, so we celebrated our wedding anniversary in Aruba. It was beautiful. So that's why I wasn't with you guys last week. We had a great time, but I want to move on. That's all the announcements, and I'll do better next week because I know there's a lot of things going on. There's some Pride festivals happening and all that good stuff. But I have a very special guest with me tonight. You guys know I'm a groupie for elected officials. You already know I'm a groupie for elected officials. And when I get an opportunity to sit down with a sister, hello, I don't think you'll hear me. When I get to sit down with a woman of color, a woman who is elected official is exciting enough, but a woman of color who is a state senator in our state house, I want you guys to say hello to Senator Jean Breaux.
Hello.
Jean was 34th district?
34th district.
34th district, mostly Marion County, correct?
All Marion County.
All Marion County. So we're going to just chat today, right? I feel like, first of all, I look at her as a mentor. She is a leader in our community, and both of us are not, we're not shy when it comes to chit-chatting. So you guys are going to like, it's almost like, you know how you say you wish you could be a fly on the wall? You're going to be a fly on the wall between Indiana's own and Senator Breaux. We are going to chat. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Well, Dana, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm overwhelmed by sitting next to Indiana's own. I really am. I was very impressed when I learned that you had a radio show. I thought, my goodness, how did she get a radio show? But more importantly, it's just so good to see what I call the next generation or the upcoming generation. Out getting involved, and because the only way we're going to prevail as Democrats is if we get all you young folks who have been up to this point, or at least since the election of President Obama, where we were out in full force and everybody was engaged, and for whatever reason we've sort of lost that enthusiasm. But this is your government. I mean, I'm there now, but I'm getting older and I'm going to be on my way out. So I need to know that when I'm in my rocking chair, that it's I'm going to be able to continue to live and thrive, even though I'm no longer able to make laws or
I think you're
make money.
I think you're going to be like Miss Cordelia Lewis Berkson. You're not going to ever stop. So,
or like my mother.
Well, and speaking of your mother, I want people to get an opportunity to know who you are, not just as this mythical being, as a politician. Sometimes people put people on pedestals. You're a regular everyday. You're actually what I would consider very lucky in that you are a second generation politician. Your mom was also a senator. Now, what year was she elected to office?
Oh my goodness, Dana! I didn't do my homework.
That's all right.
I believe she was in there for 16 years.
Okay, Billie Breaux. If you guys aren't sure,
Billie Breaux, Billiebeaux, and she actually succeeded Julia Carson in the Indiana Senate. So there's a long line of strong African American females that I modeled myself after. And yes, it was. But prior to Miss Carson, the seat was held by a fairly moderate. Well, I believe it was. Sometimes I've been told that this isn't accurate, but it's my understanding, and what I believe to be true is that it was held by a fairly moderate Republican by the name of Virginia Blankenship.
Okay, I remember her. Yes, I remember that name.
And so, it's been a long line of women who have been representing this community, District 34, for a number of years, and that was part of what led me into this position. My mom was very active, and I don't want to take over your question, but my mom was very active.
Mm-hmm. She still is.
She's still very active. She's still very active now.
And you
Lawrence.
better not come at her the wrong way, because she will read you.
Oh, absolutely, she will. Absolutely, she will. And apple don't fall too far from the tree. I learned it from her. She learned it from her mama, and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
That's why it's so important that we raise our children and train our children.
That's right.
So she was very active politically since when I was a little kid. That's kind of how we can go way back to when she was a kid.
Wow.
She grew up in West Virginia in a coal mining community, company store and all that. Mm-hmm. The money that my granddaddy made in the coal mines, it went right back to the man who ran the coal mine, because they always kept them in debt. I owe my soul to the company store. That old song. Well, that was kind of the way my mother grew up. She had 9 brothers and sisters. Ooh. And in a coal mining community, but my mom said she never realized they were poor, because they had everything everybody else had, and they had everything that they needed, and clothes on their backs when they had school pictures, or they had little stockings, socks, but they were converted to stockings at Christmas time, and an orange or something was put in there. But her mother, though, who raised and gave birth to these kids, realized that, and she herself had always, my grandmother Pearl is her name, was her name, she's now deceased, but Pearl's mother always believed that only men should receive a college education, and therefore she denied my great-grandmother the opportunity to go to college. And, my great-grandmother denied my grandmother the opportunity to go to college. And my grandmother was always very resentful of that. And my grandmother's role, according to my great-grandmother, was to get married and have babies, which was, that was the thing that was what you did back then. And so she did just that. She got married. She had 9 babies, and but she was always very resentful of the fact that she was denied an opportunity. So when she gave birth she had 1 son, and then she had a whole slew. She had like 1 son, and then she had 7 girls, and then another son. So she had 2 sons as bookends, and all the rest in the middle. She had one did not survive childbirth, but so she had all these girls, and she said she's going to make sure that every one of her daughters has an opportunity to go to college, unlike what she was denied. Yeah. And so I always thought that, I always told the story, I thought my uncle, who was her first one to go to college, apparently he was a really bright guy, and he had taken some federal exam, and my grandmother said she saw these 2 white men dressed in suits coming down the dirt road, and apparently they were from the government, because they said that there's no way that this African-American male could have passed the test with these kinds of scores. And so apparently he was very bright. I just grew up knowing he ended up being a meteorologist. His kids went on to become really, they're all very bright as well. So I always thought that, okay, so he did extremely well. And when he got out, he ended up getting his master's degree in mathematics and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, I used to always tell the story that Uncle Otha, went to school and did well, and then he got a job and then sent money back to grandmother, and that's how she then paid for each one of her kids to go to college. Grandmother corrected me when I was telling that story in her presence. She said, I paid for every one of my children to go to school. She said, and I'm sure, she just probably didn't want to admit, I'm sure Uncle Otha helped her a little bit, right? But she considered it her responsibility and her charge to make sure that every one of her children, and in particular her daughters, received an education. And she always said to me that education is the great equalizer. I say that all the time. I know it was a quote from somewhere else, but that's what she always told me. The education is the great equalizer. And so she just instilled that in my mother. And but more importantly than that, she instilled politics. My grandmother understood that not only did education a requirement, but so was knowing what was happening in the world and who was doing what, and how you make things happen. My grandfather was a coal miner, and so my grandmother, and I always get the name Lewis, I forget the name of the organizer, but there was a big organizer back in the day, and my grandmother made sure that she knew everything that he was doing and every law that he was trying to get enacted, so that when my grandfather eventually succumbed to black lung, but because my grandmother followed what was happening in Washington, she loved Franklin Roosevelt. As a matter of fact, before she died, she used to give money to the Democratic Party, and Bill Clinton, she loved Bill Clinton, and she sent him a check. And he sent her a letter, and one of my mother's sisters had it framed, and it was hung over my grandmother's bed. And everybody used to say, "Oh, that's an appropriate place to have Bill Clinton over your bed." But she understood politics. She understood the role politics played, and so on election day, my grandfather voted for Republicans because Lincoln freed the slaves, and my grandmother was a Democrat because of Roosevelt and the New Deal. So they had discussions, around the table or however they did it. But my grandfather would go off to the Republican polls, my grandmother would go off to the Democrat polls, and half the kids would go with one of them, my mother always went with my mother, my mother always went with her mother, my grandmother. So raised
she
a
became
Democrat.
a Democrat.
And
Yes.
and I think I don't know that we've had some as the generations have moved forward, we've had some discussions, some very heated. This is what we do when we get together.
Sure.
Politics is a big thing in our family. But I think I'm pretty confident in saying I think most of my cousins and my aunts and uncles and so forth are Democrats.
Okay.
Through and through.
So we know Billy Breaux has had an illustrious career, an honorable career, and when it was time for her to step down, okay, you're living your life. I know you're active and you're paying attention, but wow.
Yeah. No, I actually now, yes, I was. I followed her. Okay, she started out. She did have an illustrious career. She started out. She was she graduated from West Virginia State College, one of the first African Americans. She and Cordelia Lewis attended the same college. It was one of the first accredited all African American colleges. So they had strong professors like Crispus Attucks here.
Sure.
Strong professors, very Afrocentric, teaching you self-esteem, self-confidence.
Sure.
So so she grew up. So she, I think health or something was what she was studying.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was in second grade, she used to always come to my classrooms when I was a kid. And when I was in second grade, she sat in the back of the class. Harold Bell was the school one when Harold and I were in the same school. And she said that RadioNext.tv. She said that she couldn't believe what was happening in the classroom. That there was no classroom management. She would get my reports and things and my little workbooks. We had little workbooks back in the day. You don't remember that, but we had little workbooks back in the day. And she said that things would be checked wrong that were right, and things that were right were checked wrong, and it just really distressed her. So she, having already gotten her bachelor's in whatever it was, says, well, I can do this as well as anybody else. And so she goes back to school and gets whatever additional credit she needs to be able to go into the classroom, then ultimately gets her master's degree. But she said what happened was, again, I told you she grew up in a large family. They were, they didn't hold back. They expressed themselves quite openly and regularly. She said she was at a PTA meeting in one of her schools, and she spoke back to the principal. And everyone... her fellow teachers were like, oh my goodness, do you know what you just did? You can't. And she said, what did I just do? And they said, you can't speak back. And so that's when she realized that there needed to be a voice. There needed to be a voice that was willing to speak up and speak out. So she became involved with the teachers union, the Indiana State Teachers Association.
Awesome.
And in her capacity as a spokesperson for members, she then became the vice president of the Indiana State Teachers Association, and ultimately the president of the Indianapolis Education Association. So through all this time, I'm hanging out with my mom. She's dragging me everywhere. Pat Payne and her daughter Christy Brown and I, we were always together. They always called us the two little latchkey children. But we were always with our mother. And unbeknownst to both of us, Christy is a very strong young woman herself today. We were absorbing all of this activism, all of this speaking up, and in addition to, it was kind of a weird household that I grew up, because my mom always said, question authority. I mean, that sort of thing. Speak up, question authority. And my father was always like, do as I say. My father's from the South, the old school. Yes, and my mother was like from the North, Dr. Spock. She read all his books and, so it was a really interesting dynamic. So I sort of learned, how to play both of them, actually. But I'm sort of hanging out with her. I'm following, when she needed a surrogate to speak for her. I remember one she was somewhere out in Indiana, because she was Indiana State Teachers Association. So she was somewhere in Indiana, and I was driving whatever this distance was. It felt like forever. And I'm writing down whatever it is I'm supposed to speak. And so I'm writing it, and then I go on the sides. And so when I get to the venue and I give the speech for my mom, I'm reading it just like this, da-da-da-da-da, and the next thing you know, I turn the page, and then I turn the page, and then I turn the page, because I'm trying to find my notes. So, I'm doing all of this, and And it's really becoming part of who I am without even me being aware of it. So I'm in high school and I run for student council because it just seemed like the most natural thing to do. I go to school in Massachusetts, in Boston, and Ted Kennedy. Right now, I grew up, my mom and my grandmother, they loved the Kennedys. Loved, the day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated. I was a kid, so I don't really remember it. But I know my mom has told me that she spent that entire day in front of the television, just crying, and that my grandmother was just in tears. That was a hope for something better and for opportunity for somebody who, we always said the Kennedys didn't necessarily do it because they wanted to, but they recognized that the times required it, and they made the bold decision to stand up and do what was right in the face of a lot of folk who said, we don't want black folks, and we don't want equality, and we don't want all of that. So anyway, so the Kennedys, I grew up, I can remember some men, my brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. He should be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, suffering and tried to heal it, war and tried to stop it. Those of us who loved him and I got all this stuff that I grew up with that I memorized, as a kid. It was just in you. It was just all around, and I just started memorizing. I started reading and I would memorize it. So the Kennedys were a big deal. So I'm in Massachusetts. Ted Kennedy is running. I'm like, I got to work on a Kennedy campaign. So I was a volunteer for Ted Kennedy. He won, of course, and I was able to go into Cambridge where he had his big party at the end, his victory party, and I'm there in Cambridge and all these people, and I get to see Ted Kennedy, and so then I also run for student council there. So I'm experiencing all these kinds of things on a much smaller scale, but because of it's just who I am. I didn't even realize it. So when I got back home to Indianapolis, and I started following my mom again, as as usual. We're really good friends. In addition to she's being my mother-daughter, my role model.
And it's true. If you're ever around them, you feel that, right? You feel.
We're good friends until she wants to be a mother.
And she's gonna always be your mother, right?
Until she wants to act like a mother, until she wants to impose.
But what I've loved about her is that she has such a strong personality. And she does, and you have to have a strong personality to deal with people telling you what you can't do, and people are,
And she, I think about there was I remember there was she went to somewhere in the Meadows it was, and she'd bought a hat or something, and they didn't realize she was an African American, and then when she got there, they what. You can't return this hat. You've had it on your black head, and just all those kinds of things are things that she experienced routinely here in Indianapolis, and that's why she was so outspoken. That's why she was so determined to make sure that I had every opportunity, and because she and if she said she made a mistake, it's that she believed that the battles that they fought would make it much easier for us, when in fact now we're starting to lose ground and go backwards. That's who I am.
Because here you and I are sitting here. We're closer in age than I think people realize. And your mom is just the generation before, and you're telling us a story about active, in-your-face racism. People that follow this show, I have a wide variety of followers. I'm open to everybody because America is a multicultural. Well, no, it's a tossed salad. I think it's more. I'm more of a Shirley Chisholm kind of a way of looking at it. But a lot of times, even my good Democrat white friends go, well, but we're racism is dying. No, it's not. You still, unless all those racists are dead, racism is still here. And people who experience that racism until they're all dead, you can't say it's gone. And telling a story from, this is your mother. Your mother is still viable. Honey, Billy Breaux is a viable. She could run for office now.
If she wanted to.
Don't trip. Okay, enough of Billy, and I love her, but I want to spend some time about
But Billy is they always say the mouse comes through the hole that the rat has made.
Right.
Well, that's the hole that the rat made that I came through. So in essence, that is who I am. That's how I got to be who I am, and why I am so outspoken, why I feel. But she is right in some ways in that I've been tempered. That my outspokenness and my aggressiveness has been tempered to a certain extent because I have grown up in a very integrated kind of society, believing myself to be just as equal
as anybody else,
and just as qualified as the next guy, and so I failed to kind of see sort of the blatant and the things that I'm starting to see now.
It's like, whoa.
It's like, I should have realized that, but I didn't because I was sort of in this misguided belief that there's a kumbaya out here, and in reality there really isn't.
So I'm just like you. I went to Washington Township schools, Nora, Northview, North Central. All of the schools that I went to were above 82nd Street for the most part, 86th Street. And Nora was on 96th Street. They literally bust us in the school district to add some color to the students at Nora so that when they got to the middle schools, they weren't shocked.
Culture shock.
And so when we were in these classrooms as one of maybe one or two or three African-American kids in these classrooms, we got the same stories that the white kids got. You can be anything you want to be. You can be the president of the United States. There's nothing that you can't do if you don't work hard at it. I'm sitting in the same classroom with my white friends, and so this message is coming to me.
But
they
not
never,
only that,
they never put a caveat on
not
that.
only are you sitting in the classroom, but you're learning the same
I'm
information,
learning,
and your
right.
test scores are coming back
The same.
The same. You're getting the same scores as the top 10% of the rest of the class.
And
of
they
the students.
never put a caveat on that. Now I'm talking when we're really young people. You don't get jaded until you get older, right? But as a young person, they didn't put that caveat on there. You can be anything you want to be unless you're a woman. You can be anything you want to be unless you're black. You can be anything you want to be unless you're gay. They never put the caveat, and so since they didn't put the caveat on there, I still believe I can do what I want to do and be what I want to be.
Exactly.
And so I look up to the successes that that we've had. A lot of people think that we're in hard times and everything is miserable, but here I'm sitting with an elected official in Marion County in Indiana, one of the reddest states in the union. And you are in the State House, in the Senate, one of only 9 senators, 9 Democrat senators, fighting for Hoosier families. Tell us how you shaped your policy and policies and the things that you would fight for as a politician.
Well, one of the things that I feel really strongly and passionately about is unplanned teenage pregnancy.
Okay.
Because I think so much of what's happening in our communities is the result of young people giving birth to children that they don't know how to parent. Mm-hmm. And as a result of not having a parent who is exercising parental training and guidance and skills, then we're growing a group of folks who have no respect, who don't understand the relationship between love and what is love and what's disrespectful love, and and that's the result of the integration to the extent that we now have communities where we're all meshed in together. And used to be, and I don't know that, I'm not saying necessarily that what used to be is the best way, but it used to be that there was some kind of camaraderie within the community.
Mm-hmm, sure.
If my mom wasn't home, my neighbor down the street,
Absolutely.
she always kept an eye. If she was home, she kept an eye out for me. And if I did something wrong, she let me know about it. She let my mother know about it. Then my mother let me know about it. And so that there was that tiered accountability kind of thing. There was a neighborhood. There was a Today we don't know who our neighbors are. We don't know who lives next door. We don't. I've been trying in my little subdivision. There's 20 homes or whatever. I've been trying to just get addresses and telephone numbers of my neighbors because I just think it's nice to know. In the event something happens, I can pick up the phone and I can call I know how to reach you. I know who you are. Mm-hmm. You know who I am. And there's just there's that disconnect there. So I think the way to assist some of that and to start to turn that around is to and it benefits, it goes so much more beyond that as well, but to teach self-esteem to young girls and young men, to teach responsibility. To another component of that is education and understanding the importance of completing a curriculum and graduating from high school. You don't necessarily have to go to college, but you have to matriculate in a way that says, I'm willing to, I realize I got to get a few skills under my belt. Right. I got to know, I was watching one of those little judge shows today, and the judge asked, what's the average amount of time that you spend, with your kid, blah, blah, blah. The young man didn't even realize what an average was. What are we talking about? What does that mean, an average? So they're and I fault also, and that's why education is a key component. It's really, when it gets down to it, it's really about the family, right. And what it takes to have a strong family. And the family doesn't have to look like a man and a woman. It doesn't have, I've gotten these discussions with people who say, fathers, you really need to do, there's some organization that's all about fathers and getting fathers. If you can have a father, fine. But having a father doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to come
Success.
Out. Yeah. Exactly, because your father could be abusive. Your father could be. Yes. So a family doesn't necessarily prescribe or subscribe to any one particular format. It just,
the 1950s, fathers knows best. My three sons.
Just needs to have someone who cares, who cares about that understands where their children are at 11 o'clock, right. Who understand that, that they need certain kinds of nutrients and certain kinds of health vaccinations and, just what it takes to raise a family. Yes. And all of those things that go into raising a family, making sure that that we have supplemental nutritional programs. Mm-hmm. So if that's a necessity, let's make sure that, because right now we're one of just a few states where if you're a felon, you are not able to get food stamps. Mm-hmm. Well, how does that, if you come out of the system, if we don't want you to go back to the system, then we need to give you every provision possible. But there are people who see that as, we're a crutch, but no, it's all part of the family. So I guess if you were to ask me, it's all of the pieces that go into making sure that we have successful families, strong Black families. I told you my mother, 9 kids, and they all went to college. I used to think, wow, what a miraculous story that is. Well, there are so many families that I have met that are just like that, where there were large families and they all got college degrees, and they're so it's something that we considered a priority, that we understood was an essential component to success and to surviving and to moving to the next level. Hasn't all certainly if you look at history, there have always been patches where not everyone has believed that, and not everyone has done that, but a large
struggles along the way always.
But so I think it's strong families, what we can do to promote strong families that then strong community, strong neighborhoods, strong families, strong neighborhoods, strong schools, and that all of that will, and that's what, and I just think that there's a nexus between, if we can stop there, and John Bartlett also has it right. There's a prayer now, whether or not should that be in school or should that be in homes, But I think that there's that we need to realize that there is something greater than ourselves, and get out of ourselves and say thank you. Whether it's Buddha or Yahweh or whatever it is, but just the realization that that we have some responsibilities to the earth, that we're all connected, and that we have to understand that. And
what that looks like, because often what I find is I have these conversations, especially with my African American brothers, who are religiously focused. They often question whether or not, me being a gay woman, I have a relationship with a divine or God, or whoever. And I have to remind them all the time, if you tell me that God is perfect and he knew what I was going to be before I came out, then you have to know that God made me the way that he wanted me to be. And then he put me in a position to do the work that I'm asked to do. The great thing about being true to self was, even as people were questioning my desire to run for office, I knew that it was not about me. And I was never, when I was given the mission, because you brought it up, and I love talking about it because it's real in my heart. When I was told to go on this mission, I never was told that I was actually going to win the seat. It was never told to me that you're going to take down a 30-year incumbent, Speaker of the House, in a 2-to-1 Republican district. That was not the mission. The mission was about unity. The mission was about speaking for people who didn't have a voice prior to. When I went to look at that ballot, and I didn't have anybody to vote for, I needed to be somebody that 13,000 people.
You're part of the solution.
Exactly. And when you realize that we are all, so when I knocked on doors in Republicanville, because that's where I live, the reception was not horrible. They wanted to know, how are you going to help the community? And this is what you're talking about. You're talking about how do I as an elected official, and how do we as a community help each other regardless of all the other noise that's out there. We are all humans in this race together.
Well, you know what? I think that your race in the district that you ran against the 35-year Speaker of the House incumbent, that was so much a what's the biblical reference? The slingshot, David and Goliath. And that you were willing to get out there and battle. I think what your race showed is that if you feel strongly, you got to do it.
You got to do it.
Don't let the fact that they have 35 years, that it's a 2-to-1 district, and that they may have $1 zillion in the bank. Don't let that stop you from going out there and doing what you think needs to happen that isn't happening without you, that no one else is going to do it. And if not me, who?
Right, and here we are today. You and I did not know Senator Jean Breaux before I ran for office. And here we are, 2 African-American women speaking to an audience, hopefully inspiring people. None of this would have happened had the divine not put on my heart to go do this thing. Go do this thing. And here you are now. What I admire are those that, because I know how hard it is to run a race, right? I admire
in gerrymandered districts, which is where I live, it ain't so hard. Which is sad. Which is kind of sad.
And you know what? And that's fair. Because you could have said, man, I worked my tail off. I mean, it was a tight race. But you being honest about it.
Well, what it does is it allows me to help others. It allows me to volunteer for others, or to have more money to contribute to someone else's campaign, because I don't have so much need for myself. But and I had to do a Nouveau article. I remember they said, how do you feel about not having anyone run against you? And I'm like, it's,
I know, right? So that that you smell is Clifton brought some food in here. It smells too good.
He's not offering any.
Right.
But
have some. Okay.
But anyway, I said it's I'm kind of ambivalent about it. On the one hand, it's certainly nice to not have to get out there and bust my butt on a really tight campaign and go, door to door, 5 and 6 times over and over again, annoying people and annoying constituents, and sending them all sorts of mail and all of that. But on the and it's certainly it's so I don't have to do all of that, and it allows me the opportunity to help others and to raise money for other people and all of that. But the flip side of that is, and I win by 98%. But the flip side of that is that you don't really have a choice in this district. And if I'm really horrible, or if you absolutely just can't stand me, there's just not a whole lot you can do about it, because the district is the way it is. And so you're kind of stuck with me. So hopefully, and I would just love to be able for people to know that, they're voting for me because I believe a lot of people do know me and do believe that they're voting for me, and that if I did have an opponent, that they would still vote for me because they just believe that I do a good job and so forth.
Right.
But, those that don't know me and don't really know, and it's certainly when you're in this kind of a district, you really have to work very hard to make yourself go out there. And actually, I would love to do door to door. I would love to go door to door.
That was the best part of campaigning for me.
I would like, and that's what I like too. But there's always something to do.
Always.
There's always something to do. And once you've been in there for a little while and you represent a large district and you're accessible and you say yes to everything that you're asked, then there's always constantly something to do. So I don't really get to go door to door as much as I would like to, and that's so I'm really trying to figure out, because balance. I just think that's so important, and it's wonderful to be able to go talk to somebody at their front door. I mean, they love that. People love that.
Yeah.
People love to be in.
Engaged.
They love to see their elected officials reach out to them. So, it's definitely something that we need to do.
And that's what this show is about. We may not get everybody in your district, but here's an opportunity for people, who may not have actually just had a chance to listen to you and listen to your story. They're getting connected. So, that they're feeling your passion, because I'm feeling your passion. Because I said what I want is to always inspire. I want people to feel like they want to be better tomorrow than they are today.
Well, I should think that your story is one that's very inspiring.
Yeah, but they get tired of hearing that one.
But I mean, and I guess I just really want to reemphasize that there's certainly a way to go about doing things. There's certainly a way to bring about change, but the only way to definitely not bring it about is to do nothing.
Do nothing.
And
that's what I've been preaching on my post. Because I know people are discouraged, and don't get me wrong. There are nights I go to bed and I go, "Am I really having an impact?" But the bottom line is, as long as I get up the next morning and take the next step, it's gonna be better. Because I'm gonna keep pushing. Because no one told me I couldn't, and I don't ask for permission to serve my community in with my skill set. Some people are good at organizing. Some people are really good at organizing phone call events or volunteers, or some people are really good at the data entry and understanding how that data works. And with me, I'm good at rallying people. I get what my job is. I get what the divine has for me to do. He gave me this mouthpiece for a reason. So we're going to use it, right? We're going to use it, and I'm trying to stay, I stay as positive as I can.
Absolutely.
One of the more positive people in the State House, and I truly, truly adore him. I wish I could actually vote for him, because Jim Merritt is my senator. And so I live in Purgatory. I've told you that story before. I live in Purgatory. Susan Brooks, Jim Merritt, Brian Bosma, and Mike McClellan.
Those folks don't believe they live in Purgatory. They believe they live in heaven. They live in the crop. Yeah,
but
heaven.
you get to work alongside one of my favorite people. I've had the chance to sit on a board with him. I was in shock and awe when I got to sit on a panel with him, and that's Senator Tim Lannon. I am crazy about that man, and I love his stance. He is feisty, fiery, and even when people don't want to hear it, he is giving you why he's in that office, why he's in the seat. Tell me what you guys' relationship is like. You're one of 9 senators. You're in there struggling every day. What is it like for you two?
Well, Senator Lannon is the minority leader, and I am the assistant minority leader. So I get to work very closely with Senator Lannon, and it has been just now he's not perfect, and he will tell you that I'm not perfect. And, we all have our biases. We all have our biases. But the thing that I can say about Senator Lannon, and I hope he can say that about me as well, is that he listens to me. I mean, he actually listens to me, and he will take into consideration what I have to say. He has been empowering me, helping me to find my voice, because he gives me the respect that so often some of my own folk don't do.
Well,
and definitely some of the folks across the aisle. But he is he's smart.
Yes.
He's passionate. He is he's been I'm going to tell you, he's been trained by his wife. But
well, behind every great man.
But I mean, he respects his wife,
right.
and it's an awesome relationship, and he is helping me to grow.
Okay.
He's helping me to become stronger and to become what I consider to be a more effective leader, and an effective influencer.
Okay.
So he's had an excellent impact on me, and I hope I have had on him as well.
So one of the first times I ever was inspired by a local politician and how they addressed the State House was Senator Taylor. Senator Taylor gave an impassioned speech about something. I can't even remember what it was. But you guys are the districts are so gerrymandered, and they have such a supermajority. Honestly, and if we're honest with ourselves, you guys don't have to show up to work and they can still pass bills.
Absolutely.
What is it like for you guys, and how do you go about, trying to stem some of the things that you are vehemently against, or better yet, how do you try to get some of your good ideas in discussions, in committees? Tell us about that. Because I think if people understand how difficult it is, they may be more willing to help us out. Right? So share with us how difficult it is sometimes. One of 9 senators, there's 50 senators. 50 senators for the whole state. Democrats only have 9. Think about that. They don't even have to show up to work.
Well, I can tell you it makes it difficult because they have such an abundance of power that they make the rules and they change the rules. And a perfect example is this past session, 2016 or 2017. We're in 2017.
2017.
We have at the start of every session of the Legislative Council, of which I and Senator Landon are members, we get together and we kind of establish the rules. Essentially, the rules are the same. We just may tweak them here and there, but essentially it's the same set of rules year after year after year. Well, we have a standing rule that says that when a bill is decisively defeated, that means it's done for the session, that you cannot bring that bill back in any other fashion. You can't put it into another bill. It's decisively defeated. And that's because if you didn't get the constitutional majority necessary to prevail with a yay vote, then clearly we need to kind of take some time and kind of rethink this and figure it out. Well, amazingly, the superintendent, the bill to appoint the superintendent was decisively defeated. We were able, because there are a number of Republicans, who their constituents did not want to lose the right to vote for their superintendent. So that bill was defeated. But because it was a big agenda of the Republicans and presumably of the governor, although I don't know, I think it was really more the leaders of the House and the Senate Republicans, they figured out a way to, which is why the bill that ultimately passed, if you'll notice, and I'd have to look back at my notes, but there was the selection of the superintendent to become an appointed position was to occur like immediately in 2018 was the first year. Well, because that language was decisively defeated, they basically sent the same bill back, only changed it so that it doesn't start for another 4 years. And they made other little small, but essentially the bill was the same bill that had been defeated, where the rules said it's dead for this session, move on to other things. And so they brought it back, and so we put up a stink. We raised all of the technical issues. Senator Landon and Senator Talion did an outstanding job because they're both attorneys. And they were able to really speak to the legal side of this and just how it violated every rule. But, at the end of the day, they were able to amend the standing rules so that they were no longer relevant as they had been agreed to at the very beginning of session, and so that little slight tweak that they were able to make was acceptable because it wasn't the same bill, it was a new bill, because it's got 6 years start date instead of 6 weeks, and so that kind of thing happens all the time.
Integrity. So, like, as I was growing, neither one of my parents ever went to college. And if I'm not mistaken, my father never graduated high school, and my mother didn't graduate high school until she was 21.
Good for her.
They were 1929, 1932 born, respectively. But what they taught us, no college school, no ethics, no none of that. Be true to who you are, and be true to your word. Integrity. And when you tell a story like that, that was the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, simply because you have the power, you don't have to have integrity?
Well, and that's why I'm on my mantra is we've got to restore balance, because what's the saying, too much power corrupts powerfully, or whatever, whatever the saying is. I don't think that they are necessarily bad people, but they have control and they can do it, so they do.
And that's why we have to get involved. That's why we have to have more people on the ballot. That's Democrats on the ballot. I don't care if you're progressive, liberal, if you understand what the Democratic mantra is versus the Republican mantra, we need you on the ballot and not being afraid to fight. And if you're not going to be on the ballot, help candidates who are in, toss-up districts. Because the only way we can change these... So all of you out there that didn't like the superintendent bill, where we no longer can vote for our school superintendent and the governor who was elected is now appointed, we need you to get involved.
Another perfect example of how being involved makes such a huge difference, and particularly millennials, and we need them to be involved, because folks of my mother's generation and my generation, we're starting to die out and get a little slower and so forth, and they're doing all sorts of
relax.
And they're doing all sorts of things. Well, we never relax, but they're doing all sorts of things to make voting, put more and more barriers in front of voting, so that it makes it much more difficult. But for those of you who are young and can ride a bike or do a skateboard or whatever it is, you need to get engaged and get involved. And I know that you are and that you do, because I was just so impressed during the Obama campaign when P. Diddy and all those folks. I mean, I was going door to door for the campaign, and I was talking to all these young people that knew more than I did, and I thought, wow, they definitely read our young people. They think that we don't know what's happening, and they think that, but these young kids know what's going on. But a perfect example is the obstruction bill. Are you familiar with that bill?
Yes.
Where the language in the bill said that the police could use, and here's an exact quote, any means necessary. They can use any means necessary to make sure that traffic is not obstructed and that it continues unobstructed. Yes. And essentially what that was saying is, you can pull out the dogs, you can pull out the hoses, you can take us back to civil rights,
Tasers,
1960s, where when we were marching for civil rights and against segregation and oppression and all the things that we were marching for in the 50s and the 60s and earlier and later. That they could go back, they could revert to those means. Same tactics.
Wait a minute.
But I just want to tell you what happened though. So the young folks were just really offended by that idea, because they were the ones that were out there opposing Trump and all of that. So they were out there obstructing traffic and causing all sorts of
mayhem.
I won't even say they were mayhem. They were exercising their political right and their constitutional right for public assembly. So when they heard about this bill, they got all on social media, and they got all, I don't know, all the various social media techniques and so forth. And that committee room, it was in the basement, and I was on the committee. That committee room was standing room only. It was packed. And these were kids. These were young kids. They were in their leggings, and they were in their, they looked very much like young kids look today in their style. And that they were very vocal, and of course the chair had to say, we're not going to have any outbursts. He was trying to control it all. Yeah. But you could tell he was unnerved, to the extent where he did not even call a vote on that bill. That bill, and now the final version of the bill is a study committee, and there's nothing.
Right.
That study committees is where bills go to die.
And so that's a shout out to Black Lives Matter in Indiana and my girl Satch, and also to Dominic Dorsey of Don't Sleep. So the senator is calling y'all out. I don't know all the groups that are involved, but I know those two specifically.
And y'all had the room full. And people were out. People were ready to stand up, and it changed the whole direction of that bill. that bill would have been something else had it just been the normal group of people that come to these committee meetings. Okay. So it makes a difference, and particularly if you can organize in a way where you have a clear mission, one or two people speaking for you. You don't have a whole, a zillion people. I'm saying A and you're saying B, and so you're canceling each other out and that sort of thing. So it's about organizing, but it's about organizing with a mission. It's about organizing with a purpose and trying to figure out. We can't solve every problem. We can't solve all the problems. So we've got to focus on what those one or two that are, in this case, the right to assembly was the focus, and y'all came out big time and made a difference. So. And that's probably one of the things that I've seen with a lot of the organizations and the groups is that, they want they reparations and, all that's good, but let's figure out what really needs to be addressed and what we really can address, and let's focus, getting our energy, getting all of our ducks in a row on that, and then we can go to the next one.
And as we've talked about, you and I on multiple occasions, we don't all have to be on the same path, right? So, SCLC was on one path, SNCC was on another path, the Black Panther Party was on another path, the Muslims were on a different path. People want to assume that when the civil rights movement was going down, we were all doing the same thing.
And SLCC SCLC, excuse me. Yeah. I know that because we had one here, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. SCL. But they all had. Each one of them had a focus.
And that's because not everybody can do everything well, right? And so, sometimes you hear right now, well, especially from Black folks, we can't all come together. We ain't never been all together. I talk about it all the time.
Democrats ain't never been together.
Girl. I mean, sometimes people want Black folks to be a monolithic group of people who think the same thing and walk in the same path. We've never been that. You had your W.E.B. Du Bois group and you had your Booker T. Washington group. You always had multiple groups with multiple visions. But the thing was that
back to Africa, integration, segregation.
Yes. So the thing was Marcus Garvey. We were always trying to be better tomorrow than we were today with a different tactic, right? We knew what we wanted, which was equal access. We wanted equal access to equal opportunities and those type of things. There were just different methods to get there, but they were all working to get there. What I don't want to hear is you have to be like me in order for us to accomplish what we need to accomplish.
See, that's the whole thing I remember with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. When they kind of came together at the end, instead of believing that one was better than the other or one was more effective than the other, when they realized that together we're both trying to do the same thing, just different ways.
Right.
And you're not any better and I'm not any better. My way isn't any better. It's just different. But if we come together, you bring your people, I bring my people. We go after the same
mission. And they knew what that mission was. That mission would eventually culminate into the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We eventually got there. Now, look, here we are, almost 50 years later, and we're gutting those acts. We've apathy in some case. I mean, think about it. 2008, we were like, we got a Black president. Hey, we good. Democrats, we strong. The demographic of our country says Democrats are going to run things. Well, the Democrats have been losing seats. They changed the rules, and Democrats have been losing seats in every state house across the country since 2008. Significant numbers, over 1,000 seats.
Because, in my humble opinion, it's because this demographic change is not something that happened overnight. I will tell you a true story. When I was in college, I purchased some AT&T stock. This is a true story. I kid you not. I will never forget this. I was reading the prospectus on this AT&T stock. Must have been a slow night. And anyway, so here in black and white on this prospectus, this was 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was, this very large stockholder for AT&T said very clearly that she was going to divest her shares of her million shares or whatever it was. She was going to divest her shares unless AT&T stopped supporting organizations that performed abortions. And the reason that she felt that it was important to stop supporting these organizations is because that and this is in black and white now, I kid you not, that that white, middle class, well-educated women were choosing to have abortions, and poor folks of color were not having abortions. Mm-hmm. They were giving their birth to their babies. And if we don't stop those white middle class girls from having abortions, then the world is going to become more brown than white, and and I'm reading this as a young adult thinking, because I knew about this whole anti-abortion thing, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. and I had always thought it was because we didn't, we wanted to protect the life of the unborn, mm-hmm. All of that rhetoric that they talk about. And here it is, no, it's eugenics, or it's a
numbers game.
Race, ethnic,
It's a numbers game.
And I thought, oh my God, so they've known this. Mm-hmm. So they've known this. If you read a report, which I read many years ago again, called Workforce 2020. Mm-hmm. It was written in like 1990 or whatever, and it was predicting, that Asians were going to have a stronger position in the world when it comes to jobs and mm-hmm. And so forth than African Americans. That the factor, it was like there are futurists who sit there and they know what mm-hmm. they're predicting and writing things out that mm-hmm. that it's going to happen in the world, and so Republicans see all of this happening, have seen it all happening, so they have come together, the Cook brothers and all those folks have come together years ago mm-hmm. with a playbook to try to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that, they're livid that they had a black president, because they missed that. They didn't, they're too busy working at the state level. They, right. They never figured that we would have, but so that's what this whole thing, and it could be more than that. I'm sure it's very dynamic, has a lot of different things
pieces
and things.
To it. Yeah.
But essentially it's about control. It's about power, and it's about resources, controlling resources, mm-hmm. access to resources. Mm-hmm. And it's and we, if we don't understand that, we better get in the game. The game is already almost past us. If you look at all the states across this country where they have control of the government, and the majority of the people, which is what blows my mind, is that Democrats, I believe, really represent the values of the vast number of the popular vote.
Yes.
They are us, and they want what right. A more egalitarian kind
right.
of.
Right.
But it's those smaller numbers in those places that are winning, and it's because we're not in the game. We are not in the game.
And they are controlling the message.
We are consumed with things that don't matter at the end of the day. At the end of the day, and they are running roughshod over us. And until we realize we got to get in the game. It's if we don't, and there is time to change the game around, because right now, we are in such a sorrowful state right now that if we were to come together and really just put all of our energies and our resources together behind a couple of key folks, we would have an opportunity.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I always talk about is that people fighting over perceived power. You don't have any power. So stop fighting each other over perceived power. These people got the power.
They got the power, and they have had the power, and they are planning to keep the power, and they're going to do whatever they need to do to keep the power.
But here's the deal, and this is the part where we have to recognize our power. There are more of us than there are of them.
And that's why we have to be organized. We have to, maybe there are five or six different factions. Right. Black Lives Matter. I was at a meeting where Black Lives Matter, they were talking about, have you all thought about remuneration of slavery? And I'm like, I want to say, young lady, okay, I'll give you that. All right, maybe it is owed to us, but we got much bigger issues that are much more pertinent that we need to be focusing on. Now, I'm not going to say that if somebody gave me a mule and 50 acres, I wouldn't take it.
Exactly.
But I don't know that that's our battle. I don't know that that's our fight now.
And the point that you're making now is that it's not the race divide. It's not the gender divide. It's not it's
about survival of the everyday middle class person of
And
color of...
Well, you got to give me a little longer than 50 seconds. I want to get this out because we didn't get a chance to talk about any policy or any bills or anything like that. We didn't get to talk about the health care, but the point that you're making is this health care bill that the Senate has, that they're trying to push through the Senate and the House, where basically it's saying it's the survival of the fittest. If you are not healthy and you cannot get health care, you're not going to make it, and therefore you can't be in the fight. If you have money,
and trust me, they have figured out how to make sure that they and theirs
have what they need.
Have what they need.
And that's why I say, if we keep on fighting over perceived territories that we think that we manage, if I've been to a lot of counties, as the deputy chair for the state party, and I've listened to Democrats on all sides of issues fight each other, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't have a problem with the disagreements because those things are good and healthy to help us learn. But to suggest that I'm trying to hold on to something, some perceived power, even in Marion County, we could not even control how many city county council members we have because the state house controlled how many county council members we had.
And now we can't vote for our judges.
Now we can't vote. So while we need to
Lake
understand.
County, Marion County, and St. Joe County, the three highest populated counties with African Americans and Democrats, are the only ones out of 92 that are unable to elect their own judges.
Tell me what that. And now the other point,
and that didn't happen accidentally. That is by design, and it has been. There is a playbook back there that they have been reading.
I'm live though. I'm live. But the other thing is, now people talk about the federal level. Even at the federal level, you have to understand where the power is. We passed Obamacare. But how many state houses said, I'm not going to expand Medicare? I'm not going to expand Medicaid. So we need to understand where the power really lies. There was a reason why when our founding fathers set up the government, they had states' rights and federal rights. And the feds can only do so much, and the states can only do so much. People need to understand where the power really sits. And honestly, it sits in 50 state houses. And if you don't understand that, then you're missing the point.
And that's why there is an attack on all the state houses.
Yeah. So, you know what? I knew this hour was going to go by too fast. I do not get enough of talking to Senator Jean Breaux. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you for your interest
and
your passion and for your leadership.
Oh, I'm working on it. I'm learning because sometimes I don't do so well. My mouth gets me in trouble when I say things that piss people off. But,
that's part of the learning curve.
I know. My passion is about how can I help the citizens of my state. And once you understand where the power is, then
civics. We need to take the We the People course.
I remember going to summer school, and I got to end this show, and I know I need to.
Okay.
But I remember falling in love with my summer government class, so much so that I took a U.S. history inquiry class.
See, you've been interested all along.
Yeah, I did. But see, you know what? I knew that I liked making an argument. I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I knew I liked making an argument and fighting for things that mean something. It means something to know that people have enough money for food stamps. It means something to know that our legislators are funding our public schools the right way. People need to understand when I make a post about IPS shutting down, it has nothing to do with the IPS school board. IPS school board only can do what is available to them. The legislators in the state house determine what that is. So people need to understand when I say, when they shut down Broad Ripple, where people who live in Meridian Hills send their children, how much longer is it going to be before IPS is shut down? It's not about what the IPS school board did or the decisions that they made. Their hands are tied by the legislation that comes from our state house. Y'all need to understand where the power is.
And there is an attack to try to dismantle public education. They don't want it anymore.
Everything you do in life now is a commodity.
They're tired of paying for poor black kids to get an education when they don't think they have enough money for rich white kids in the suburbs.
That's it. Hello. Listen, and we want everyone to get an education. We want everyone to have an opportunity. I want my same, white union brothers who unfortunately have been sold the same kind of dream, because how do you get poor white people to fight in a civil war that keeps them poor? You convince them that something is going to happen that ain't going to happen. People, y'all need to understand, it's not about race, it's not about black and white, it's about those of us who are working and trying to have a living, and those that want to control everything.
It's a class war.
It is.
It's a class war.
Okay. We got to end this show. I know we've gone over an hour. Senator Jean Breaux is awesome. I'm hoping she comes back. She is not on the ballot in 2018, but she will be on the ballot.
Don't forget to IBLC. We're having town hall meetings.
Yes.
But I don't remember the dates.
Black Caucus is having town meetings. I'll post them. Don't worry about it. We'll get that. Also, I'm fired up today. I want to make sure before I leave as Deputy Chair of the State Party that I mentioned Resistance Summer. Make sure you guys go online, indems.org/join. We need you. This thing is real. Understand what we need to do and it's going to take a little bit of the time. I need people to run for office. Women, do not be scared to run for office. Women of color, I need to get you involved. Brothers, encourage your sisters who are strong and run a good household. She probably can run and write some good legislation. Encourage her to be a leader. I'm encouraging you to be a leader. There's an opportunity for all of us to take a hold of our government because it's we the people, for the people, we the people, right? Right. It's all about us. We have an opportunity. Thank you so much for watching this extended show. I love you guys. Turn left. We'll be back next week. I have a special guest. Rebecca Crooms is coming down from Anderson. So you guys, I'm bringing elected officials from all over the state. Hopefully everybody comes. I know you saw that in next month in August. I have Congressman Carson is going to be on the show. Ooh. So, we are working to bring you good quality information. The show ran long today, but you can't help it. I got some wonderful people by my side right here. You guys should get what I get on a regular basis. I'll talk to you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining in. I love y'all. Turn left.
Turn left.